Hello, my name is Ray Hughes, and I'm an interviewer for the Veterans History Project out of Washington, D.C., and conducted by the Library of Congress. This interview is for the Veterans History Project, and it's locally administered by Brian Powers, who happens to be our cameraman today. Today's date is the 19th of September 2019, a Thursday afternoon. And we have the honor and privilege of interviewing World War II veteran Staff Sergeant Jerome H. Roettgers.
Correct.
Is it the correct pronunciation of your name,
That's
sir?
right. That's right.
And what do you prefer to be called, sir?
Well, I used to have a lot of red hair. They either call me Red or they call me Jerry. But
I'll call you Sergeant if that's okay.
that's fine. That's fine too. I've been called that for a long time.
Yeah. Well, Sergeant, if you would, give us your date of birth and where you were born.
July the 18th, 1924. I was born in Cincinnati, and I was there for about a year, and then my parents bought a home up here in Norwood, and that's where I spent the rest of my life. I'm still here.
And your parents' names, your dad and mother?
My dad's name was Joseph, and my mother's name was Helen.
And your mother's maiden name?
Burling.
Burling?
B-E-R-L-I-N-G.
I see. And what did your father do for a living?
He was a printer. He worked in a printing shop.
I see. Here in Norwood?
No, along the river, down there on 2nd Street.
I see. And was your mother...
Mother, a housewife.
Housewife?
Yeah.
I see. And what about brothers and sisters?
I got 3 sisters. One of them older than me, and then I got 2 younger ones.
Are they still with us at living?
Well, the youngest one is still alive. She's 88 years old.
Okay.
So.
And what were their names, your 3 sisters?
My oldest sister's name was Rosemary, and my second sister's name was Anna Mae, and my third sister's name was Madeline.
Now, your dad's father, did you know your grandfather on the father's side?
Yeah. He they lived down in Cincinnati, and nobody had cars way back then, and about the only time you would see a grandpa or something like that was at maybe a Christmas time or at something special,
Mm-hmm.
and then the whole family would be there, and that's how you.
What was your grandfather's name on your dad's side?
I got it on there, on that.
How come?
He was when I was about 4 or 5 years old. He was going across Central Parkway down there, and he got cars. The old people at that time weren't used to automobiles, and he got hit by a car and was killed.
Oh, I see.
But
Now, on your mother's side, your grandparents.
on my mother's side, my grandmother lived with us. She actually, her husband was a Civil War veteran. She was a German girl. She, at that time, I guess, a Civil War veteran, if he wanted a wife, he could advertise in a German paper or something. Well, I need a wife. Well, there would be girls that would do that,
Mm-hmm.
just to come to America. And I'm saying things that I was never told, but I'm putting pieces and pieces together, And she was probably maybe 17, 18 years old, and he was maybe in his late 30s or 20s rather, and he died of the flu 1918.
What were their names? Do you recall?
My grandmother's name was not Helen. That was my mother's name. Anna. Anna was my grandmother's name, and her husband's name was, oh geez. Every once in a while I read that thing to find out what it is.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what his name was really. I don't
but
remember.
She and Helen lived. Your grandmother lived with you.
She lived with me till she died. She died in '52.
I see.
She was 85 years old when she died.
Did she ever tell you what part of Germany she was from?
Yeah. She wasn't in like in Berlin or anywhere. She was one of the country girls. Actually, when she was old enough, they put her in to own her own board, and that they put her in a hotel. You know, or I don't know whether they were hotels at that time, but they had rooms, and she cleaned the rooms and things like that until. I can imagine when they advertised it, there was a lot of girls that young, same thing like she, that wanted to come to the United States to get a husband. And
right. Do you recall what her maiden name was?
I think it was like something like Menken, or MMMMUE or something. Menken, something like that.
Yeah.
But
as when you folks moved from down on 2nd Street, was it?
Yeah.
You moved out here to Norwood. What area did you?
Well, that's where my dad worked, on 2nd Street.
Right.
We lived on the Parkway there, somewhere down Francis. We went to I know there was St. Francis Church. Yes, Sarif. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the 12th and Vine.
Yeah, that's where we lived, in that neighborhood somewhere. Where at, I don't exactly know.
Yeah.
So I was only 1 year old then, I think. Yeah. And I wasn't interested in where the hell they lived.
Yeah. So then you moved out to Norwood?
Yeah.
And where at in Norwood?
Right up here on Elm Avenue.
I see. And so you were a member of St. Francis Serif downtown?
Not really. The only remembrance I have of them is years later we played basketball against them. Mm-hmm. But that's all I know. I was probably baptized down there.
Yeah. What church were you a member of out here in Norwood?
St. Elizabeth, from the time we got here and went to school at St. Elizabeth. But then they closed that church, and we're all up here at it's called, was St. Peter and Paul's. They call it Holy Trinity Church now.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought there. And what grade schools did you go to?
I went to St. Elizabeth for kindergarten through 8th, and then I went to Purcell High School 4 years.
Where's Purcell High School at?
Purcell is over in Hackberry Street, in right around St. Francis de Sales Church.
That's in Walnut Hills.
Yeah. I guess you'd go. Yeah, I guess it would be Walnut Hills.
Yeah. And while you were at Purcell, then did you play sports?
Yeah.
What sports did you play there?
Well, you were in the end of the practically the end of the Depression in 38 to 42, and if I wanted to go to a Catholic high school, I had to earn some money, and I took every little job that I could possibly take. So I played basketball, but not very much. I had to give sports up because of the fact that it cost $60 to go to school then. Now $60. You can imagine what it is now.
Yeah, $60 a year.
$60 a year, and I had to pay for that myself. And everything that I worked, my mother would take out Well, certain for my board and stuff like that. I mean, I had to pay for everything. I mean, it was tough.
What kind of jobs were you holding down?
Well, I had the first job I had was delivering shopping news, and they delivered it twice a week, like on a Tuesday and a Thursday, something like that. And I got $1 a week for that, and my mom would take 90 cents, and I would get a dime, and then she would put that helped feed the family, and then after that I got a job over. I had sold the papers over at the American Laundry, which was, I don't know, do you know anything about the American Laundry, and whatever I made, maybe $4 a week, and I split with my mom too, and I also sold magazines on the weekends. I would go up and down the pike and all over the houses, and I had kind of a route, and I sold magazines, and I might have made maybe made another about $1.50 or something like that, and then later on, they opened up an Atlantic and Pacific A&P. I don't know if you remember them stores, and I worked there. I was allowed 40 for my age, and I was in high school though, I would work like Monday and Friday or Thursday. We would stock shelves, and go there after school, unload the trucks, stock the shelves, and I'd be there till maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd come home and get about 2 hours sleep, and then go to school,
Yeah.
And
what'd you make an hour in days? You
13 cents.
13
Don't
cents.
wait, no, I'm sorry, 37 cents. I think it's in a thing. You'll read it. I think it was 37 cents an hour. That was the smallest you could make. I mean,
minimum wage.
Minimum wage I had was 37 cents.
What? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
ahead.
No.
Well, that's right. I don't remember anything. Go ahead.
What were your years in high school that you started and you graduated?
Started in 38, graduated in 42.
I see. Did you major in any particular field while you were in high school?
No, just an academic course.
Uh-huh.
And well, I mean, that's what every one of us took. I mean, we didn't have anything special. Everybody took the same thing. The only difference would be is maybe a class on a typewriter or something like that. And I guess I was the worst typist in the whole school because I had the worst machine. The other people got new machines. I had an old timer. I guess it came from the Civil War. I don't know.
So in 1942, that would have made you 18 years old when you graduated.
Right.
What did you do after you graduated?
Well, a buddy of mine, we played curricular sports later on, like on Sundays and different things like basketball. And this friend of mine, his father had a well drilling business and he drilled wells in Norwood. He used to have their own water, and he took care of the wells in Norwood, and wells for Procter and Gamble, and what and I worked for him for that summer until the 43, March of 43. That's when we were inducted. And
so you were drilling wells?
Drilling wells. Before, I mean, just my son. I'm not my son, but my buddy could, you know, he worked with his dad from the time he was a little guy, and he knew the business even when he was 18 years old. I mean, and that's how to drill a well and so. A lot of the wells we drove were for farms and too, also in the backyard. You know, the old wells that you pumped, maybe
Sure.
80, 90 feet deep, and for farmers. But it's and then went in the service.
So, you were you drafted?
Yeah.
Um,
At first, I tried to enlist in the Air Force, and my teeth wasn't as good as they expected.
Isn't that something?
And yeah, and I said, well, I don't want to. I can remember. I said, I don't want to bite them. I said, I want to shoot them. You know. I said, I'm sorry, but your teeth are not. You're not. And the same way with the Marines and the Navy, they didn't want no part. And then so I went in the Army.
So
The Army wasn't that particular.
so you got your draft notice, and what was the date of your induction? Would you say?
The day that we were inducted was March the 20th
Of 1943.
43. Yeah.
And where did you go to sign in at downtown Cincinnati, or?
No, we the draft board was out of the city hall here in Norwood, and we had a report like on a Monday morning, and then it was a pretty good sized draft, and they took us to Fort Thomas, and then we started the processes there.
At Fort Thomas,
Fort
Kentucky?
Thomas, Kentucky. Yeah.
I see. How long were you over at Fort Thomas?
Well, until about a week, I guess it took us so they could find a place for us to go, I guess, and also we get all our shots over there and all the examinations and you know we were actually inducted there.
Uh-huh.
You know?
Were any of your buddies with you?
Yeah, they were, but then we all got split up over there. You know, they had a line, and we stood in a line, and they had the Army, the Navy, and the Marines were there, and they went down the line and they took turns. And the Navy said, "I'll take this guy," and the Marines said, "I'll take this guy," and then the Army had to take the third guy, and then they went on down the line. And I know the one kid went to school with me. He was kind of a student. You know, he didn't get into sports or anything, but he was a good student, and he was scared to death that the Marines were going to pick him, and they're coming down the line. And I said, "What difference does it make where you go?" I mean, so he said, "I hope the Marines, if the Marines don't pick him." And you know, I never did ever talk to the guy afterwards. I don't know whether he even lived or not.
Yeah.
But it's.
So from Fort Thomas,
Fort Thomas, they loaded us on this train, and there was a MP at the front and the back, and this was a rickety old
locomotive.
Oh no, not the well, the locomotive was the steam engine, but the cars were old timers, and not very comfortable. And the guy said, "Well, don't worry." He says, one of them, they say, "Where you think? Where are we going? Everybody want to know where are we going?" And the MP he said, "Don't worry." He said, "When they have old trains like this, you don't go very far." Well, we went all the way down, and we ended up going and going and going, and every place you go, you're always sidetracked for a regular passenger train or something like that. And we finally in a day and a half we got down to Camp Landing, Florida, and they come in, pulled into us, and it looked like we were going into a forest. We didn't know where the hell we were at, really.
Where's Camp Landing, Florida?
It's about 40 to 60 mile west of Jacksonville.
Okay.
It's a
were
big.
you in uniform then?
Yeah, we had our uniforms on.
Okay.
Yeah, we got them up at Fort Thomas.
Fort Thomas. Okay.
We had everything up Fort Thomas except rifles,
Mm-hmm.
But
Tell us about Fort Blanding.
well, naturally everything was new to us, and when we got there, we find out that it's a brand new division, the 66th Division. It's just being activated, and so when the train came in, we came into a area. It was pretty good when we unloaded the train, and we're standing out there, and then the train pulled away, and there's a bunch of people there in uniform, nurses and everything else. And the first thing we heard was, "Take off your clothes." So what the hell kind of army is this? Take off your clothes. So, and then put on your raincoats. So we were standing there naked, our clothes down at our feet, in a raincoat, and then we had to get in line, and the doctors checked us all for venereal disease, and for any other thing they wanted to look at, see if we didn't have any lice or anything, or best. And then we put our clothes back on, and then they start calling our names off, and there was 5 or 10 of us that would be called to go with this guy, with a corporal. And we thought a corporal was a general then, and so we went back to our companies, and I was the 10th guy in our company, and our company is like around 200 men, when they're full, and each day the troop trains kept coming in, and we'd get 10, 15, 12, different amount of guys every day. And then, they would just find some work details for us to do, until, they would have a couple things like close order drill or something like that. Show you which is your left foot and which is your right foot, And then
What kind of an area was Fort Blanding? Was that a city or a forest?
It was camp. I mean, it wasn't a fort. It was
a forest.
Yeah. Oh, it was the closest town to was Stark, Florida, and that was 7 miles away. And
so you're out.
It was a big farm area before, and then when they started, and a lot of places the sand was so heavy, it was kind of tough walking, A lot of times we'd be out when we really start training after we got full, the division was full up. That was around Easter, and
of 43.
Of 43, and the general had us all. We had a march in front of the general on this big parade grounds, and he said that we'll get some training. That he says, and believe me, he says you'll get trained, and he wasn't lying. He made it tough on us for a couple of years.
How long was your basic training there at Fort
Basic training was to September. That way, that was just the basic stuff, you know.
Right.
And rifle range and marching and then when we and it was so hot through the summer that we had to take salt tablets in the morning, and then on the way back we were always told that you watch the guy in front of you. If he doesn't look like he's sweating or he's wobbling a little bit, grab him because he's about ready to pass out. And it did happen too. And I mean, you know, the heat, just and walking all day, and then we kind of got weaned off of into a canteen of water because if you didn't do that, you'd drink the whole thing before it even got noontime, but we got through that too, and then we started to get ready in September. We start to get ready to go to Camp Robinson, Arkansas, and we were going for that's the second phase of our training. That was hiking, tacting problems, there was we eventually got into maneuvers, you know, and we start off with an overnight. The first time we were marching, when we were walking out to the field, and it was in November then, about November, and it was cool, and it started to rain, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained, and I'm telling the guys, at that time I was appointed as a squad leader. I wasn't had no rating or anything. That was my job, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And told to get my guys. I said, oh, they'll probably, you know, close us out. At supper time, I said they'll send us back to camp. Well, we found out the Army is a little different. we stayed that raid all night long, and that's when I found out that we were in the Army. And
where is was that Camp Robinson?
It's Camp Robinson.
Where's that located at?
That's right in practically 4 or 5 miles, maybe outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, and it was a nice camp. When we started having problems where there was a mountain there, and we attacked that mountain so damn many times. And I can remember the one time we attacked that mountain. We took the mountain, then we started to dig foxholes, and absolutely I dug right into concrete. And I'm not concrete, but it was rocks, you know. I could not dig any further. And this captain comes up, he says, "Hey, Sergeant," he says, we got a rating too by then. And he says, "Hey, Sergeant," he said, "if that artillery was coming down on you, you'd be digging that hole." I said, "No, sir." I said, "If that artillery was coming down, I'd be on the other side of that hill with you." And he laughed like hell. But
so during the second phase of your training in Arkansas, you are a sergeant now?
yeah,
What, a buck sergeant or?
buck sergeant to begin with.
Yeah.
And then
And you're a squad leader still? Are you still a squad?
Still squad leader. Yeah, that was a buck sergeant rating at that time. And
how many men are under you in
12.
12 men?
12, yeah.
And
you got a BAR unit, about 3 guys. You know, 2 ammunition carriers, and the the BAR, Browning automatic
Right.
rifle, and then there's 3 platoons like that, and then there's a 1 platoon of the light machine guns and the light mortars, 60 millimeter mortars, and I was in the third platoon.
Now you were carrying a M1 Garand?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we then we started really into make believe war. I mean, I was this is a little story, and I had a jeep driver and a flag bearer and myself and a lieutenant, and we were like it was a game. We were like referees, and so this one day we were with this other company in another regiment, and the guy in the headquarters company got sick or something, and they took my lieutenant away, and they made me in charge. So the problem was an attack problem, and we had set up, and the guy took me around and showed me where his machine guns were and where everything was at, and shit, it was damn near impossible to cross this field, with the troops, and they're attacking, and I had the guy run out there with a flag. A flag would either stop or go, like almost like a traffic light, One flag was red and the other one was green, I think, or blue, I don't know. But anyway, this command car comes flying on the field, and so this guy jumps out of the command car and he runs over towards me, and he says, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, we got this thing covered with this field covered with ammunition. I said, nobody can make a charge with." He said, "The general wants to see you." He's in his command car, so I go back, and he said, "What's the problem?" I told him. I said, they can't advance because we got it covered." He said, "Sergeant," he said, "this is an attack program." He said, "I'll give you 5 seconds to get your ass back there and get that other company moving away from you." And so, man, he scared the shit out of me. I ran as fast as I could back and said, "Lieutenant," he was in charge of his company at this time. I said, "Pick up your guys and get going." They said, you gotta retreat. You gotta retreat." And when it was all over, he called us together, and he said, the general did, and he said, "I just wanted to tell you, man." He told me, he said, you did all right, Sergeant. You did all right." He said, "But this was an attack program, and you were supposed to." Well, nobody. I said, well, I kind of shut up. I better not open my mouth. So, and he said, "But he says, I just wanted to show you how it was harder to retreat than it was to attack." So that was the main thing in this and but this is many years later when we had one of our reunions. There was a lieutenant that I had talked to. He wasn't he was out. He was an older guy, out. He was out of the service then, and he was in the office with the general, and he said. I was telling him the story, and he said, "What?" He said, "He told you did a good job?" He said, "What? He told you you did a good job?" He said, "I was with him for 7 years." And he says, and I never heard him tell anybody that they did a good job. He said, you must be an extra special. I said, I don't know, but he says, I had to have been there to see that. I would have. But because he was a stern guy, you know. I don't think he ever laughed. I don't think I ever seen him laugh, the general. But and then we went, you know, into to 3 days out, 5 days out, 6 days. And then and our area was so large there that we didn't have to go someplace else to have maneuvers. They brought some guys in, and we had games between them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were just about set, and I thought, you know, like I was telling you, that he was in when I come back from furlough, he was in the Washington, but the orders were to split us up or send them as many as.
When did you get a furlough?
Hmm?
When did you get your furlough?
I think about. It was before Easter in 40.
So you went from Florida.
43 or 44 was
Yeah.
before.
So
Yeah.
you went from Florida to Arkansas, and you got there around
September.
and
And this was like might have been February or March of the next year, which was 44.
right.
And then when we come back, it was we had all new guys, and we moved down to Camp Rucker, Alabama, and we were there. We got there in about May or June, and we thought because we started training in like jungle training, so we're confused. We didn't know whether we was going to Europe or going to where we were going, and because it was all jungle down at this Camp Rucker.
You said that you were with some of the guys from the 29th and the 1st Division also?
Well, they took their training before us.
Oh,
They were like in 42.
Oh, I
43.
see. Uh-huh.
You know, as somebody move out of Camp Landing, another outfit would move in. You know.
Okay.
And but they did some of their training, probably their basic training there too.
Okay. When did you get your furlough, though? Do you remember your furlough there
And
from Arkansas?
it was early in part of 44.
February of 44?
Yeah.
And what did you do, come to Cincinnati?
Come home.
Come home?
Yeah.
How long were you home?
I think the furlough was around 13 days or 14 days, something like that.
And from there, when your furlough was over, where did you go?
Back to Camp Rucker, that's where I got the furlough.
Okay.
Or I mean, no, I went back to and then I got another one down, and they gave us another small one down, and when we were just about ready to go overseas.
Hmm. Now, what was this about your general, though, being in Washington?
Well, I mean, we went to get orders.
Was that
Yes, I
after
called him back.
was that after your first furlough, or
No, that was during my furlough. He was gone.
and what orders for what?
Well, he thought he was going to get orders to go overseas, and so did we. Really,
Mhm.
we were told our training was just about finished. You know, there wasn't too much more that we could learn, except actual combat. You know,
Right.
and so everybody was getting gung ho. You know,
But you had to make a choice of picking men for replacements and things like that, didn't you?
yeah.
When was that? And explain that to us.
That was oh yeah, that was when I come back from furlough. I come back and the general came back and we got orders. They called us, like I told you, they called us all in, all the non-coms in, and said that we have to supply half our company for replacements. So that means that you have to have half of your men. You have to pick half of your men to go overseas, and so that was when we.
This is before D-Day.
Oh yeah. It was
but-
about 3 months before D-Day.
But they already knew that they were going to have so many casualties. You had to pick replacements.
Yeah, that's been one of the things that's really bothered me. The rest of my, I mean, now, even up to now, I never did ever hear what happened to those 6 guys that I sent. You know, I don't know whether they went into D-Day or if they went later on after D-Day or if they got to another division before. You know, they were divisions over in I don't know if you ever heard about the when they were training for D-Day, when they were on this one little island like or something. It was similar to the beaches were similar to the ones that they were going to land in France, and they were practicing assaults there, and some German PT boats came by, and these guys are attacking with no, you know, they're just practicing. They got no firepower whatsoever, and these German boats went in. They killed about 500 of them.
Yeah.
That was Did you hear about that?
Operation Tiger.
Is that what?
At Slapton Beach.
And that was another hush up for many years.
Right.
And so they had to replace them guys. And they had to replace a lot of them that were sick. A lot of them that were hurt. You know, there's always somebody got hurt in something.
Right.
And so they had to get it. Maybe they ended up in the 4th Division or the 1st Division or the 29th.
Yeah. You had to. You said you had to pick 12 men out of your company.
No, we had. Our company consists of 40 men. We had to pick 20. Half of the company. The company. Oh no, that was our company consisted of 200.
Right.
And we had to send them 100, and our division was like 16,000. We had to give them 8,000. I mean, officers, they got everything. I mean, it was, but it got down to me, the lower guy. I had to pick out and I guess it was just as tough on the company commanders. I know they took our company commander, and he was from Louisville, and he was the sternest guy, but I tell you, he was the nicest guy that you ever. I mean, he was a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, it just. I mean, you would have went through hell with him, you know. And then they took my platoon leader. He was a graduate of Maryland University. He was a lieutenant, and then some of the ones didn't have any choice. You know, that the first sergeant wanted to get rid of. The screw ups, you know. There was always a few of them. There was the bitchers. And I don't know if you, but it seemed to me that the guys from New York, New Jersey, Eastern guys, you know, they were the biggest bitchers. They bitched about everything: the food, the walking, everything, you know. And but the Midwest was the best soldiers, I think. They never had anything to begin with, and didn't expect anything when they were done, you know.
I think you mentioned once that you were selected to go to OCS.
Yeah.
How'd that come about?
Well, when you went, you
And
take
where were you when that came about?
Well, I was down at Camp Rucker,
Uh-huh.
and well, when you took your test, your Army, you know, they knew what your you know, it was 120 was tops, and I think my score was like about 115. And my buddy, he was he was a lieutenant, or not a lieutenant, but a officer too, non-commissioned officer too, and he was about the same. And a week before I got my orders, he got his, and they were losing a lot of officers overseas. I mean, if you know your dad in Roettgers there,
Yeah.
the 4th Division, they lost a lot of officers,
Right.
and they but he he uh, he was a nice guy. He got married during the war, and they took, I mean, you know, put his allotment in. He didn't have hardly any money, and I wasn't a type of a guy to go into a lot of these on passes and go into town and drink a hell of a lot or stuff like that. I wasn't old enough yet, and so he was a little bit older than I was, and he said, "Jerry," he says, "I got my orders to go to OCS." I said, "Great," you know. I said, "You gonna go?" "Yeah, but I don't have no money." And I said, "Well, this is a hell of a time to ask me, because this is the end of the month, and we ain't gonna get paid for about a week." And I said, "I don't have any money left either." And he said, so I said, "I do have, I threw all my pennies in my footlocker." So I said, "Let me see," and I went and I got all my pennies. I had about 400 pennies, 500 pennies, and I gave him the 500 pennies, and I said, "I bet you're the only guy that's going to officers training school with 500 pennies in your pocket." But and then he left through it. He went out. He has seen action afterwards, after he became an officer. But I just kind of lost track of that. He was one of the bitching type from up in New England. Yeah. In see, I kept.
So you got your orders. When did you get yours? After that?
Right after that, about a week later. You know.
Yeah.
And
Well, why aren't you an officer?
yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, that's because I wanted to go with the guys. I mean, I just wanted to. I mean, you form a bond with a bunch of guys, you know. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to go with you because I was with you.
Well, how'd they let you? How'd you get out of it though? You have to.
They finally okayed it. I mean, they like I said, I had to go to the first sergeant, and he gave me a permission to talk to our captain. I talked to the captain. He gave me permission to talk to the battalion. Battalion gave me permission to talk to the regiment. Regiment gave me a permission to talk to the general, or to his general staff, and like I said, they all ask, why don't you want to become an officer? I said, well, because I don't have anything against officers, but I just want to be with the guys that I've been with all the time. I don't want to go with a bunch of strangers. So, but, and if I had to do it all over again, I would have still done the same thing, you know, because,
Are you a staff sergeant by now, or still a buck?
well, I am on my records. I'm a staff. Well, yeah. I'm a staff sergeant. But there was an order after the war that all prisoners of war would go up a grade, and I never did ever ask for the tech sergeant. I mean, because they didn't know what the hell they were going to do with us to begin with. Like you said, you talked to mostly Air Force guys. I mean, when Eisenhower, when the war was over, Eisenhower figured there was about 40,000 American prisoners, and the camp that I was in, Camp Lucky Strike, they had 4 camps in France. One was Lucky Strike, Old Gold, Chesterfield. They all named after cigarettes, and they all expected about 10,000 men for each one of those camps, and our camp alone got over 40,000 guys. There was like 100 and I forget how many prisoners they had all together, but it was over 100,000 because, like,
Camp Lucky Strike, that was at Le Havre.
yeah,
France.
right.
Oh.
You're like there's the Air Force guys. You know, when you send out 900 airplanes, bombers, and 200 of them go down, you know, they had no way of knowing how many lived, and some of the camps that they got in, there was no, the Germans never told them who they were or how
no
many.
real record of them.
Yeah. But
well, let's go back to Camp Rucker. You're still at Camp Rucker when you declined becoming an officer. What happens from that point on? Did they take the men that you had selected out of your group right away?
they in the beginning they took the ones before D-Day, right. And then the second one they didn't take quite a half of them, but they took a few more. So we got maybe. I happened to be on special duty then. I was they had to, every man that was going to go overseas had to have on his record going through a combat course. Had to have one was where we went full field pack and a 2-mile run, you know, all things like that. And I was running. Well, for a while I was at the rifle range, and then then again I was on the combat, one of the combat ranges, and my job was I had like little kids blocks, you know, your ABC blocks, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they were nitrous starch, and I had a pair of pliers, and you punch a hole in it, and you put a cap in it, and you can make for each inch was of the thing was about an inch, was about an inch a minute, you know, and if you put a 3-minute thing in there. The guy'd have 3 minutes to move, you know, and you kind of threw that. You walk behind these guys and kind of threw them around like artillery was going, you know, and this one time I kind of goofed up. This guy was froze. He actually, I mean, they do it not in, I don't know what they do in combat, but they didn't even in learning. I mean, this one guy jumped in this hole, and I said, "Come on, you got to stay up with the rest of the guys." And he didn't want to move, and I said, "Look at this." And I lit this damn thing. I had about a 5-minute fuse on it. And I threw it down, and the damn thing rolled down in this hole where he was at. And I get out of there, boy. He finally jumped out after he realized what the hell happened. But I was scared to hell. I mean, I thought sure as hell I killed somebody. But it's But then we got some new guys in camp and in our company, and I didn't even know them. When we went overseas, I didn't even know some of the guys. And and a few of them I met later on. But
How long were you there at Fort Rucker?
from about I'd say probably about 3 months. But we were there till November. We left or October, early part of October. We got on a ship and went across over to England.
Where did you?
At the end of England.
Where did you board the ship at?
In New York.
In New York?
Yeah.
You recall the ship, what kind it was?
The USS Squires.
Squires?
Squires, General Squires. General. It was named after a general, General Squires. And that was kind of odd, you know. It was amazing, really. The
And this was what? When is this? When you boarded that?
Probably the first part of and either the end of October or first part of November.
44.
44, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we left the early in the morning, and we went down the river, and we had already passed the
Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty, and before they leave us up on deck. So I never did see the Statue of Liberty. And then we went about 2 days, and it looked like we were going down because the sun was coming out, and it was getting warmer, and so we must have went south for a while. And then about the third day, wake up in the morning and there's ships all over. During the night, all those ships came, came in the convoy. It took us about 2 weeks to get across because we went south towards Africa, and then we went back up. I guess maybe if they knew where some U-boats were, we try to stay out of their area, I guess. And then too, once we went down as far south, and then we turned and went up the north towards the North Sea. The water kept getting worse and worse. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, the ship. One night, we were like the men. The troops were in like the center, of the convoy, and then right behind us was this big troop ship. Also but it was I can't think. Washington. It was called Washington. I don't know what it was, George Washington or I can't remember, but it was a troop ship before the war.
Mm-hmm.
And one night we were laying there, and the sirens went off, and the lights lit, and usually lights were out. You know, the lights went on, and the sirens start going, and then all of a sudden quiet again. Well, it so happened that the next day the sailors told us that we made a left turn, and the Washington was coming straight, and if they wouldn't have signaled them with a siren and the lights, that they would have probably cut us in half.
Oh my
And
God.
if they would have, because they were a lot bigger than we were, and
Wow.
and they already had told us that if anything happens to any of the ships, they're not going to stop for pick up anybody. So, but we were one of the days we were down there, and I had to get about a half a dozen guys, and we had to put some from a cargo hold. We had to give them some food, move it to another hole so they could get to it, you know. And we're down there handing it up, and oh, boom! We heard this big boom, and it sounded like our ship got hit by a torpedo. And to this day, I told this story. I don't know how the hell I got out of that hole. I don't think I could have jumped that high to reach. Somebody must have grabbed me when I went up there, but I got out of the hole. We start moving, and they said it's nothing. The ship, we had a sailor, you know, what do they call it, an armed guard on our ship,
Yeah.
and they just practicing. They shot a couple shells off to practice, and it was down there. It sounded like the the first of the world went off, but and then actually we got into the rough part of the ocean going up to England, and this particular day it was on a Sunday, and the captain said, or no, it was Saturday, I guess it was, and this captain said, one day, I don't know if you can recall, but they changed Thanksgiving from the day that it was usually on to the next week, and this captain come on the air, you know, and he said, they told me that they changed Thanksgiving. He said, I don't know whether it's this Sunday or next Thursday or what. Or he says, I don't know what. He said, anyway, we're gonna have it this Sunday. And so I was like tomorrow, you know. And we had to go down the main deck, like, and then we went down some stairs. And then we went down what they called the quarter deck or something, and we walked down to get into and we ate standing up, and the sea was nasty as hell. The ship, some guys never got out of their bunk from the time we got in there. So the time they were sick as hell. Fortunately, I had about the first 3 days it was a little bit woozy, but I never threw up or anything, and but the we were going, and all of a sudden the ship's a Liberty ship rocks, like this. It's got a round bottom, and it doesn't go down like a ship does, you know, down the front end going up, and this rocks this way, you know. And we're walking down the lower left, lower quarterdeck, and this wave comes up, and you can see it coming, and it was way higher than the ship. And it came, and it just, we grabbed onto the bar, and it soaked us to death. And it was it was November, and it was nasty, or October, I don't know, at the end of October. It was damn getting close to winter. And we got soaked. And the guys said, shit, we're not standing in line anymore. Soaked, we're going back and change. I said, I came this far. I said, I'm going to stay and I'm going to eat my Thanksgiving dinner. And so I go in and I get my Thanksgiving dinner, and I go in and I set it down. I just set it down, and the guy next to me threw up all over his tray. And I don't know how you guys are, but at that time, if somebody threw up, I was right with them. You know, I was going, oh, oh, oh. I didn't throw up, but I was choking, and I just couldn't eat. I just couldn't eat. And so I picked up my tray, and I started out to the door, and they always had a Navy guy there. And he said, where the hell are you going? Food is hard to get. You eat all that. Don't you dare pour through that. I said, get out of my way. I said, get out of my way. I said, I have been on that line out there for 2 hours. I said, I got soaked. I come in, and the guy threw up next to me. So if you don't get out of the way, I'm going to dump my tray right on top of your head. And he said, I don't blame you. But, and then I guess, but anyway, it was about 2 weeks before we went across channel. We got to Plymouth, England.
Plymouth?
Plymouth. And did you land over there?
No. I wasn't in there. I wasn't in World War II.
No, I mean,
no.
Oh, you said you went over that way.
Yeah,
oh, you flew though.
Yeah, we flew. Yeah.
And then we went down. We were like at a seaport, like a little. It was a. They told me that. I mean, we walked around. We had a couple of hikes and stuff like that while we were there. That it was like a summer resort. You know, people used to come to this. But we were bivouacked in a church, like.
Did you live outside, or did you in tents, or?
No, in England.
Yeah.
In a church.
In a church.
We were all spread up around and our whole division was in different little cities and towns and.
Now, do you have your full contingent of men now back, 15,000?
Yeah.
But half of them are replacements in your outfit, aren't they?
Yeah. They're not as trained as we would have been to begin with, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You never know what happens. I mean, this book where this Roettgers, the guys that were through a hell of a lot, and all of a sudden they absolutely go out of their mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaving. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go by, you know.
Yeah.
And.
So half of your division is replacements who really haven't had the training you've had.
That's right.
And
not enough training.
Right. And you're in around Plymouth, England.
A lot of them were in the Air Force that we got, and what they had was ASTP. Army Specialized Training Program.
Right.
They kind of defunct that, and you know.
Yes.
And we got a lot of those guys, and they were out of shape. They were, you know, and.
They had been going to school, actually.
Yeah, they were going to school all the time, and then they get put into the infantry, outfit. You can imagine they were screaming their heads off, and they just that's what we had to do. We had to get them, like I said, through the combat courses and learn how to fire a gun, zero, and they didn't really have the walking training that we had, and we did a little, but you can't do it all in 1 month.
Right.
But and then Christmas Eve, we were in town, in this little village, and the MPs come around and said, "Get back to camp. These are going to be shipping out." Well, when we moved any other time in the States, we were 3 regiments, the 262nd, 263rd, 264th. The 262nd would be first, 262nd would be third, or second, and the 264th would be third. Or vice versa, or 64, 63, 62. Well, it so happened that we found out later, and I still don't know whether to this day whether it's true or not, but that's the only explanation we ever had, was the reason our regiment didn't go with the 262nd and the 264th is that our heavy weapons didn't show up in time. And so one of those regiments took our place on Leopoldville. And you know what the Leopoldville was. Leopoldville was our troop ship.
Yes.
That left on Christmas Eve, and they got within 5 miles of France, and they were torpedoed, and we lost about 800 men in the channel, and there was a bunch of them killed by the torpedo. But then there's a lot of things that we heard later, and we were all sworn to secrecy, because in England, it said it took 2 hours to get a message. Now, why it took that long, I don't know. To message back to England that the ship was needed help, and it took, I don't know, forever in France, and that's where the Americans' big shots were, the ones to give the orders for this, and it was Christmas Eve. They were all partying, which there was nobody on duty, nobody to give word in France for any ship to come out to help them. And I think I had a letter that I got from a guy who was down in Florida. He was a Navy man, and he said that his officer said, "The hell with orders. We're going out and helping those guys." So he started out, and he kind of started a lot of the guys going out to pick up as many survivors as they possibly could, because at that time, 25 minutes in the channel, they said it was the end.
Right.
That you're dead. I mean,
the water temperature.
I don't know. Some of the guys I talked to that were actually survivors were there in the water for 2 hours, but the ship sunk in 2.5 hours. Nobody ever knows why the captain of which is the name of the British convoy commander, the Brilliant, never knows why the guy ever told him to drop anchor, the ship that was torpedoed. But his thing was that the ship didn't have any power, and it was drifting towards the minefields. Now, maybe it's true, maybe it ain't, but and also there was something something to do that the Americans were supposed to have notified the somebody in France, notify the that they had a ship that had injured, and it was a lie. It was the ship that was sunk was not a hospital ship, but they didn't have any markings on it. So this guy with the submarines, you don't know what the hell it is. At the time he sunk it. He was a young guy. His name was Gerhard, I think, or something like that. And
well, it was an act. It was just an act of war.
Yeah.
He didn't.
No, I mean hell, Hitler wasn't everything. I mean, everything that came across the channel was reinforcements, you know.
Right.
And any reinforcements they could knock out, the best they were. And
so normally, that was the 262nd Regiment on the Leopoldville.
And the 264th.
And the 264th.
But there was another ship. This is a thing that I don't understand. There was another ship called the Cheshire, and somehow or other, for years they didn't know who went down with the ship because how it happened. How could a half a company get on one ship and a half a company get on another ship? So they wasn't sure. That's what they said. They wasn't sure that who ever got on the Leopoldville. I mean, maybe a couple squads of guys, maybe a couple platoons of guys from one company got in. I mean, grant you, it might have been dark. It might have been. I know the next day we loaded on a ship too, but we had to. We were supposed to load a couple hours before we did, but we had to wait till they unloaded the ship because they had a group of paratroopers on it that weren't supposed to be there, and we were supposed to head that whole ship. So they had to take them off of the ship and put. It was a lot of confusion. The Battle of the Bulge created a lot of confusion in our troops, and at the time, we thought. Well, I think the bigwigs thought the war was over. Actually, I think they figured, oh, that
Yeah.
we got them locked up, you know, and the Russians were coming in, you know, hard on the one side, and it was a little snafu there. I mean, that's the reason nobody was allowed to. We weren't even on the ship, but we weren't allowed to talk about it. And I talked to another guy later on. This was after the war, and he said, "Hell's bells!" He said they had heard that 3 days after the ship was sunk, that everybody in Germany knew that the ship was sunk, but they put out the word. We didn't want the Germans to know that they had sunk this ship, you know. And but
did they actually call you together and swear you to secrecy, or was it a directive?
It was. I don't know whether it was a directive or what. It might have been over a loudspeaker or something like that. We expect your men to be quiet about this until we give you the word, you know, something like that. So on the ship, because we were on this ship, and everybody was saying, "What happened? What happened?" You know.
What ship were you on? The 263rd.
I don't know what the heck. That's one of the names that I don't know.
Cheshire. Now, and so half of the 264th went on the Cheshire.
Half and half. They didn't know. That's the reason they didn't know what the casualty list was, because they had to put all these. They had to, how many guys are left that are on the Cheshire? Right. How many guys were on the other ship? that weren't supposed to be there. They should have been together, you know, and
Wow.
so it was a messed up deal. I mean, just like
And the Leopoldville actually sunk.
yeah,
It went down.
yeah, and they found it. They know where it's at, but the the guy that found the Titanic,
Yes.
yeah, he found it too, but he was implicated with our division at one time. I don't know just whether he was in it or but they were sending divers down, and a French ship or frigate, he said, came by and said, run the shit out of them, run them out of there. So they couldn't check anymore on the ship. And well, you know, not only that, but this was a Belgian liner. I mean, but run by Belgian personnel, and they had colored from the Congo, or I don't know, just what the hell it was, but a lot of those guys, the crew guys have jumped into the lifeboats and took off, and our troops are sitting on the deck, standing on the deck, and they said that the brilliant the English destroyer came up and next to it, and imagine, you know, these ships are going like this, you know, to one another, and a lot of guys had to time their jump from the top for the cruiser to the,
Wow.
you know, I mean, the guys saved themselves, and a lot of guys didn't make it, and they were smashed between the ships. The one I learned a lot of this from a fellow that was in our reunion. He used to come there. He was on the ship. In fact, his platoon was in this compartment where the torpedo hit, and he said he had to take a leak, and he said he was up at the head of the ship when the torpedo hit, and it killed all his men. And there was no way he could even get back there because it tore up a lot of stairways and stuff like that where guys could get out, and that was a lot of things that guys couldn't even make it out of the ship because there was no way for them to get out. I mean, there was guys helping them, trying to help, you know, and I guess certain places they couldn't do it, but it was, and then so we were the only full regiment, so they sent us down to Saint Nazaire. And
is that where you land? Where did you land on the ship that you took over?
Well, we went first to Reims, I think it was. We were like we bivouacked overnight at I would assume it was a soccer field or some kind of almost like a football field.
At Reims?
Yeah, I think it was Reims. And then we got on the train. They took us off by truck. Then we got in on a train. We went down to somewhere down near Saint Nazaire. I mean, you know, outside of Saint Nazaire, but because actually Saint Nazaire was like, we were about in a perimeter of about 45 miles, I think, something like that, from there in Saint Lorient. I don't know if you've talked to anybody about there or anything, but when
they're on the coast, these two.
Your dad's outfit took Brest too, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, see, they lost so much time at Brest, and so much men that they said we'll blockade all the rest of the seaports, and that way the they'll stop all the traffic coming in, all the supplies coming in, and also stop them going out. So when Patton kind of split up the German army, some of them headed for Germany, some of them headed for the seacoast. But the ones that got into the seaports couldn't get out, and that's where ours. We had we had about 45,000 Germans in the St. Nazaire pocket, and we were 16,000 guys, but no, we were about 3,000 of us, because that's about what a regiment was. And but they didn't want to go nowhere. They couldn't go nowhere. They could have went through us, but they would have been annihilated by. We had air superiority. They would have cut them down, So it was mainly patrols.
So the 263rd was sent to St. Nazaire to keep the Germans in the port city.
And they split us. Then we started getting some of the survivors, from the Leopoldville, and they built up a few guys, and they some of them went from our regiment, and some of them that were left went to Lorient, which was up a little bit higher seaport. There was the ones that they blockaded were Bordeaux, La Rochelle, and the two that I mentioned, Saint Nazaire,
and Saint Laurent.
And so and the submarines couldn't get in and out. It was we could have just sat there and not done nothing, but
when is this? What time period is this that you're there surrounding?
We got there about December, or no, well, I think we moved in or New Year's Day. I think
Is it correct to say you were surrounding Saint Nazaire?
Yeah, we had a couple French forces that had a part of but it was what it was. It was a half circle around from and but.
And what time frame was that again?
First of the year.
January of 45.
45, yeah. And so then it became just patrol after patrol, and so this one day I think it was the 12th of January, and it had snowed the night before, and we had about a foot of snow on the ground. And one of my buddies was going out on this patrol, and I told a lieutenant that was our lieutenant that was from my platoon was going to take the patrol out, and I said, "I'll go out with you." I said, "I don't. We got this CP back here. We got a fire, and we're going to get wet. There's no doubt about that. So, but we can dry off. But he can't. He'll have to go back in his hole." So I told him. I said, "Hey, you don't mind if I?" "Oh yeah, you take my place if you want it, So we went out, and we were supposed to go to point A, point B, point C, back. You always go a different route back, as you don't go the same way either way. Just I mean.
How many men are with you?
There was the lieutenant, me. I was in second command. Two privates, and a radio man. So there's 6 of us altogether. Another sergeant too. I forgot. And So we got out, and we went to Point A, and it was just like taking a walk down the street, you know. And never heard nothing, never seen nothing, never even seen a footprint or any tire print or any damn thing. And so we went a little. He said he called us up there, and he asked me. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "You run this outfit." I said, "You're in charge." He said, "Wherever you go, we go." So he said, "Okay." So we start moving around. We don't just keep going. And we left about 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's getting close to noontime, and we're probably out maybe 6-7 miles behind the German lines. And in the meantime, we crossed the line, and we're up on top of this hill, and the guys down at the bottom of this hill, which was maybe from here down to Reading Road, started firing at us. And it was the Frenchmen. You know, well, I can't blame them because they didn't know we were supposed to be there. We weren't supposed to be there. And I said, so we got on the other side of the hill. They couldn't see us anymore. And then we went and we was checking every farmhouse, every thing that we could possibly check on the way. Never seen a footprint. So he called us together. The lieutenant called us together again. He was a West Pointer, incidentally, too. And he said, he said, let's go down to this. We turned off and went down. He said, let's go down to this crossroads. He said, we don't see anything but there. We'll go back to camp and back to the line. So we got down there, and our mission that day was try to find something about their artillery. Their artillery was probably the worst thing that happened to us, you know. And so we got down there, and right up the top of this hill, just a little bit over it. We couldn't see it, but it was close enough that we knew it was right over there. It was a big cannon. I mean, it wasn't an 88. It was a big gun of some sort. It was boom, and that was our objective. So we had to try to find out the location of it so we could get it was. So what happens? He goes up the side of the hedgerow, and I'm going up this side of the hedgerow. I got the radio man with me, and he's got the two privates, and the sergeant with him. And even if we'd have found the gun, which we found later on after we was captured, even if we had found the gun, we'd have had a hell of a time because I had the radio, he had the map. And I don't know where the hell we were at, and he didn't know. He couldn't call anything in. He couldn't call the coordinates in. I thought, after you sit and think about something, what a stupid thing to do. But we were not that smart yet. And so it's, we got up and the, got up to this little opening in the hedges, and I walked through the hedges, and just as I walked through, all hell broke loose. I mean, where we couldn't see any footprints or anything else, they just opened them up like a trap door. Their holes, and they start firing at us. They hit everything they had, and especially the machine gun. That was the worst part. He had open field, and so they pinned us down pretty good. And I did spot the And in fact, I had a bead on him, and just I was ready to. I had to actually took the safety off the gun, had the trigger about halfway through, and I wasn't going to miss him. And uh, the radio man screams his head off, scared the hell out of me. It's like, help me, help me, help me. So he's the big heavy radio. He'd have no cover hardly, and the machine gun was scaring the hell out of him, I guess. And so I had a knife, and I dropped everything, and I let the trigger go. I didn't fire, and I tried to get my knife out of my, and I had a cartridge belt, and I couldn't get the damn knife out of the pocket. Meantime, 3 guys came around the hedgerow, about as close as to the back wall there, and they opened up on us, and they hit him 3 times, once here, once there, and I think each one of them must have hit a bone because he screamed hard, and I tried to help him a little bit, and they were on top. Next thing I knew, this grenade goes off, and I guess it knocked me out or done something because I don't remember anything for a little while. And the next thing I did remember was the snow. My face was in the snow, and I kind of shook my head, trying to what's going on, and I look up, and the guy's got his machine pistol right that far from my head. And that was the end. We were captured. And the other guys, they had them trapped on the other side. They couldn't move, and they moved for they motioned for the lieutenant to come across, and he had to walk across this little field, and he steps on one of those anti-personnel mines, and he blew his leg, and they had to cut his leg off to here before at the German hospital, and but it was nothing we could do, but it's amazing how you never seen a damn track, and then all of a sudden these doors open up, and in she came.
They had them dug in the ground like foxholes?
Yeah, just foxholes with a wood top. And of course, I don't know whether they had anything that they could look through. I guess they did.
Mm-hmm.
And but hell, we could have walked right past them and probably knew that they weren't there. But they were, and it's kind of funny, and I don't know whether sometimes other people believe me or not, but I started screaming at those 3 guys that were there that we needed a doctor for my buddy, and I tried to get my pack off, my medic, and the guy kept pushing my hand away with his gun, and I started arguing with this guy that we go get a doctor, don't stand there, They didn't understand what the hell I was saying, but I don't. It looked like a high school kid. Honest to God, the one guy did, and it could have been. I mean, really, they had some young guys, and well, they took us out, and then we were standing out in the back of them where their positions were. We were standing out in the back, and well, not just the 4 of us left, and we were standing there, and that guy with a machine gun walks out, and he's got the damn, I've seen a movie where they have a belt of ammunition thrown over their shoulder, and he goes out there, and it was like, well, this is it, and so they instead they put another guy. They marched us up to this German CP, and they put us in this room, and then they called us out one at a time, and we had to go in, and this officer's in there, and he can't speak English. Nobody can speak English except this little old, all greasy guy, and he couldn't speak good English, but he tried to make me. He wanted to know where are my big guns? Where's the big guns? Where's the guns? Where are your guns? And I was one of the first ones to go in there, and I could come out. I said, just act like you did. When I told the guys, I said, just act like you don't know what the hell he's talking about. So and these guns, and the officer would start hollering at him, like, you dumbass, don't you know how to? I thought you said you could speak English or something. But anyway, then when they marched us, we marched all day, all night, till about midnight until we got back in this town. And I don't know where it was at, but it wasn't St. Nazaire yet. And they put us in this cellar, like, and the guys, what is that? What is that noise? I said, probably rats. I mean, you know, it was dark, pitch dark, couldn't see. And next day they brought us out, and there was a bus there, and this bus actually ran with coal, with wood. It had a big, like a stove in the back of this bus, standing on the back bumper, and we would drive about a mile, and the guy'd stop and go back and throw wood in this thing. It ran on the steam or whatever. I don't know how the hell. I don't think anybody around here could run a car on a fire.
No.
And so we got all the way back to this place where it was during they tell us that during the war or before the war, you remember when we started flying clipper ships. You ever?
Pan American.
Pan American. In that big seaplane.
Right.
I don't know if you remember or not, but it was a big seaplane, and it was the first kind of planes that they had one to fly to Europe. They had one to fly to Pacific. They had about three of them. Pan American, China Clipper. China Clipper was one of them, and it had 6 engines on it, and they said it would land on this river. The river was there when we were alongside of us, the Loire River, and it came up, and it had a big cement driveway and it would come into this hangar, and that's where they kept us. But we weren't kept in the big part of the hangar. We were kept in the baggage room, they tell us. That's what it was. It went before the war. And
that was on the Loire River?
Yeah, on the Loire River, yeah.
And the Clipper actually landed on that river there?
On the river, yeah, and then taxied up to the...
Right.
But, then we just spent the rest of the... It's funny,
Were you in the hangar?
We was in the hangar, but we were in what they call the baggage department, like I guess they put the baggage there, and then when they loaded the plane, they load the baggage with it.
Right.
People, and then there was 2 rooms, we were in one, and the French prisoners were in the other room. They had about there was about 22, 23 of us, and there was about 28 of them, something like that. And right before we, I think the week before we actually got there, in the 94th, we were relieved the 94th Division, and they had a prisoner exchange, and so if we'd have been there, but they wouldn't have it. They tried one. They tell us later on that to exchange prisoners, but no Germans wanted to go back to them. They wouldn't. they couldn't even get enough uniform man for man. They couldn't get any Germans to go back. Once they were out, they were home free. They were eat like hell. And
so your prisoner of war camp was a hangar?
Yeah.
And do you recall the name of that village there?
Well, it was Saint Nazaire, the town of Saint Nazaire.
Oh, it was Saint Nazaire.
It was Saint Nazaire, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was. One thing I wanted to see, but I never did ever get to see it, was the fortress that was there, the U-boat.
Mm-hmm.
Because the U-boats could bring in three, I think, something like that, 3 U-boats or something, and from underwater and bring them up. But the Americans were having no part of that.
So the Loire River empties, or actually
it goes all the way up to Paris, I think.
Yes, but it empties into the ocean there.
Yeah,
Saint Nazaire.
Yeah. And
so you were captured on like January the 12th of 45?
About the 12th, yeah.
Yeah. And how long were you?
It's like the guy said, I told you not to volunteer.
You took the guy's place. He wanted to stay warm, huh?
Yeah.
So you let him stay warm.
Yeah. Oh, well.
You were wounded, and
well, a little bit from the grenade, and scrapes along the line, but not a whole lot. Nothing serious.
You were very lucky and fortunate.
Oh, let me tell you another story. I don't tell this one very often because I don't know if people think I'm nuts or not. But we was over in England, and there was a lady that we had heard in this little village that people ran their lives over what she would tell them. I mean, they believed her. She was God, I guess. And so my buddy and I was walking this particular Sunday. It was the day we had to go back to the camp, and it was early. And I said, "Oh, there's that lady's name. Let's go in and see what it's all about." So she goes in and she says, I happened to be the first guy she talked to him, and she said, "You're a very lucky guy." She said, "You think you're going to the west, and you're actually going to the east," which would have made it Saint Nazaire would be the east shore, and the west would be the Battle of the Bulge, And so she said, "But you're going to go to the east, and you're only going to be there for a while. The war's going to be over, and you're going to be home in June." And and I had a high school ring on, and I turned around so that she'd see the looked like a wedding ring, and I kept flashing it so she would see that and she said, and you're gonna meet a girl. She says, I can't quite get the initials. She says, but it's either GHO or JH, and I cannot. I cannot. It just doesn't tell me exactly what the first initial is. And then she said, "You'll be home in June." I say, "Lady, you're nuts. You know, the war won't be over. You know." And so what happens? We don't go to the Battle of the Bulge. We go down. To the west. We go to the east, down Saint Nazaire. The war is over in May, and I get home to my house the 27th of June. 6 years later, the girl I meet, her initials were G.H. Her name was really Virginia, but they call her Jenna Holmes. I mean, everything she told me actually turned out, and
Wow.
and you know, I'm Catholic, and you know, you're not supposed to believe that kind of fortune tellers and stuff, but they said that that the people would pattern their lives out of that woman in a town.
You remember that town?
No, I don't remember any South something was Southgate or Southampton or South something in I almost have to see a big map of something that.
Where was your camp at?
Well, that's it was the south. Is that first word was south? It was right on the channel, but in fact, they tell us that the first division was in places where we were at, and that on D-Day that this is one assault boat left with these guys from the first division, and at 6 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock or something like that, and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon the ship comes back and it's got 2 wounded guys and an officer that went completely nuts. It left.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of them were killed, but that's the story. I don't know.
You let's go back to your POW time then. Were you interrogated?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
tell us about some of
the guy that interrogated us all the time, and then he would come and just tell us stories about what was going on. He was an extinguished guy, and he went to Oxford, incidentally, in England.
Yeah.
And that's what he told us anyway. And then he talked like it too. And he talked. If he come in there now, you'd thought he was an American soldier. He had perfect English, and he told us he went to Oxford, and he wanted to know. You know, he knew my grandmother. I mean, you know, her name was Burling. Why did we were Americans, and I mean we were English German name, but why were so many? That's something they couldn't figure out, I guess, is why there were so many people with German names fought against Germany. You know, but he came in at one time and he said, and this is at the prison camp. This was out in the yard, and he came over to me and he said, "I just talking to your captain this morning, Captain. Damn, he give me his name. I don't know where he got the name from because he didn't get it from any of us." He says, and he says he gave me the your lieutenant's gold bars. He's or not gold bar, but silver bars. He's a first lieutenant now, you know. So he says I took him up to the hospital to him. I said, how's he doing? He's doing the best they can do for him. But and I don't know what the hell the guy ever was. Every time he came, he had a different kind of uniform on. But he said that he used to go back and forth between the lines. And I believe him. I think he did because you know he could speak English just as. But he wasn't exactly a. I don't believe he was a. A member of the German army. I think he was in the upper echelon, you know, like maybe a mayor or something of something. He because he didn't just maybe just an interrogator too. But,
How was the food at the?
oh well, it was for breakfast we got a little like a little lily cup full of black water. They called it coffee, but it was never had. I never tasted any coffee. And for lunch we got a slice of bread. And for the evening meal we got a little bowl of rutabaga soup. And every once in a while there was a little road that went by the one gate. You'd see him take a guy be taking a horseback through there, really a swayback horse. It had to be an old sucker. He'd have you know, and I said, hey, meat tomorrow. Sure as shit, we would get maybe one little piece of meat in about a square of about 3/4 by 3/4 or something in our soup.
That was the old gray nag.
That was the old horse. It was all pink, and they say that's what it is. Their meat's pink. I don't know, but as far as treatment, they never beat us or anything. They expected you, whatever word they put out, they expect you to do it. You know, I mean, you know, they never let me go. They wouldn't let any non-com go out to work details, but the guys every day would they had a big regular horse cart, and they had like 6 wires off of it, put on the side where you could get a hand on the wire and pull, you know. And these our guys, there'd be 6 of them maybe go out, and they go to this place and where they had probably taken all the telephone poles down, and they bring maybe 2 telephone poles back on this cart, and that was our job. And the Frenchmen would cut it up into logs like this, and then we would split them for the little fire we had. The little pot-belly stove was the big little pot the room was bigger than this that they kept us in, between the 2 of them, and whatever little heat we had. But
how many men were in that camp altogether, would you say?
well, I said there was about 26, 28 Frenchmen, and about 22 of us, something like that.
Did the 22 of you all live in one room, or did they have different?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had each one of us got a bunk, and it was a straw mattress and burlap, in a burlap bag, like, you know, put on and a half a blanket. So you either put the blanket down, and don't have one, or else cover yourself with a blanket. But that's all you had. and the water was a drainage that came up from rain. We had a rain barrel. There was no. The town of Saint Nazaire was completely dry, as far as it was hit so many times with not artillery, but well, I guess artillery also but mainly before was from bombs. That their water system was nothing. They didn't have.
That was a submarine
Yeah,
port there,
and
right?
so we had the water we had to catch.
Wasn't there a movie made about that?
It could have been. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I heard that that's why I really wanted to see it, because they actually had a factory in with the underground where they made armaments. I mean, shells and food. It was like a big dispensary or something. They had I guess the subs would bring it in and they would process it and so forth.
Did they treat your wounds for you while you were there?
Hey, the one that comes down the side here, the interrogator said that I didn't even know I had it. He said, "Did they treat that?" I said, "No, I don't know. Can you see a little
Yes.
scar going down through here?"
Yes.
And I said, "Don't worry about it." I said, "It stopped bleeding." So I didn't really didn't even know it was, I put my handkerchief up there and I couldn't feel any blood. I said, so I didn't. You know, with excitement, you never know what. I mean, so many guys get hit along the line, they never even know it. You know? But
did the lieutenant recover?
Lost his leg.
Yes.
Lost his leg. 2 weeks. That's what I kept asking that guy, the interrogator. I said, why can't you ship? He ain't gonna hurt you no more. I said, why can't you ship him over to and let them take him to a hospital? You know, because they didn't have their hospital. They didn't have anything that. I guess they used my pouch that I had a couple sulfa pills and that in it, to, you know, for somebody else, you know. But they never had no treatment for their own men or for, and
did he live and get to come home?
He lived.
Yeah.
But I never did see him afterwards.
You recall his name?
Norman.
Norman.
No, that was his last name.
Oh, Norman.
I don't know his first name. I don't remember. But we always, you know, called him Norman, Lieutenant Norman. But he was he probably got a record at
Did you get to communicate with the French POWs while you were there?
they were stupid asses. They, you know, we was out there one day, about March. Well, when it started to warm up. See, I would say the St. Nazaire was maybe more like on an angle of maybe or a straight line with like maybe South Carolina or something. I'm not positive, but it warmed up in March, and these Frenchmen had a ball, and they would get out in the field a little where we were, where our fence was growing around, and they would kick this ball, and then they'd run after it, and then they'd kick it again, you know, and then they'd kick it again. That was the first time I've ever seen soccer, you know, and I thought, and then they laughed like hell. I said, what the hell kind of shit is, you know, what kind of game are they playing? It looks like a baby's game. And here, look at what we got now. Look at the soccer that's being played now. But it's and there was one kid there. His name was John. He was a sergeant, and he seemed to be interested in us, you know. And but between him and me trying to teach him, he did learn. He was a fast learner. He could pick up English, you know. But other than that, and he had a picture of his sister, and she was a beautiful girl. I mean, she was about his same age as him, and he said, "I want you to meet when we're done with you. When we get done here, I want you to meet my sister." Of course, I didn't ever see him after the day that the war was over. This Frenchman, he lines up his men, marches them out the front gate, and they marched up the street. And that's the last I seen of them. All the prisoners.
Wow.
I mean, hell, they could have got shot. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that's right.
He was a little looked like a little weasel. He was their captain or something. And that's shit. No wonder they lost. But it's an experience, I tell you. It's just, but you know.
So the war actually.
And just to give you a couple more stories,
Uh-huh.
the one soldier on this one gate, his name was Lou, and we'd tease him a little bit. You know, he could speak. He spoke like a guy from Brooklyn in the beginning, and was like, you know. Then we'd sit there on the gate, and he would be on this side, we'd be on this side naturally, and say, "Lou, I wonder who's taking your girlfriend out today." And oh, I don't have any girlfriend. I got some American girlfriends. He was a merchant marine sailor before the war, and he spent a lot of time in Brooklyn. Their ship would come to New York, back to Germany, New York to Germany, and he's a big guy. And good-looking guy too. I know damn well he had some girlfriends, but he said, I dread. He said, you know, when the war's over, he said, I dread going back to New York. He said, that's such a beautiful city. He said, I had more good times in New York. He said, imagine a city like that being completely demolished. And they seen pictures where Hitler put out propaganda pictures of America, New York City being leveled.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I said, they must have built it up pretty damn fast. I said, because when I came through there the last time, I said, it looked pretty good to me. And he says, I don't know whether to believe you or not. I said, well, you'll find out if you ever get back there. And then the day that we were going to leave, this commandant of the prison camp was an older gentleman. And I mean, he was a gentleman. He was and he was no Nazi or anything like that. But he called me and this other guy in. He said, he said, I try to treat you fellas like a prisoner of war. He says, I know we didn't have any food. He said, but he says, we didn't have any food ourselves. He said, there's just no food. And he said, but he said, I would ask you if you would do me a favor. He said, well, either one of yous, my sister lives in Minneapolis. He said, would you, either one of yous, write her and tell her, he said, I haven't talked to her for 7 years. He said, would you tell her that I came through the war alive? And, well, it so happened this other fella lived in a state right next to it. And he said, hey, I'll take care of it. And I'd seen him later on. He did say he did talk to his sister. But And then they got some of the guys told me that went after the logs on the detail, the wood detail, that they talked to some of these guys that were down around this place, and they were sailors that were put in the army. They had this one guy said that he lived in Cleveland, and his wife and family were in Cleveland, and that she begged him not to go on this last trip on the ship, and because his ship actually came into the Great Lakes, I guess.
Yeah.
And he said, honey, this is my last one. This is my last trip, and he says, and they grabbed me. He says, they kept me, they wouldn't let me go. But he said, now I gotta sit, I don't know how long in a American prison camp. And I said, well, maybe not. Maybe they'll let you be into your got family. I don't know whether they ever did or not. But it's
So you get released on May the 12th?
yeah. They took us by this old bus again, and took us to American, where they had set it up, and they turned us over to the American. And in fact, and who do I run into but the same captain that I told that I'd be behind when the shelling started, I'd be behind the thing with him.
Oh.
And he said, well, it's good to see you again, Sergeant. I said, yeah, it's good to see you too. It was...
Did Americans interrogate you or check your health or anything?
No, it really... Oh, when they took us back, the first thing they did was put us in this tent to take a shower, and then deloused us. Because I guess might have been buggy. I don't know, but they couldn't tell the difference. When them mattresses started to in the heat, and when I said it was getting warmer, when those mattresses, the bugs start coming out of them damn things, and shit, you get bit at night.
Yeah.
You never knew so we were supposed to. I didn't eat any of them, though. but one time, it just goes to show you what you will do. We were the light ran around the window ran around the top of the one part of the room. That side, and it was down about so far. Well, they had barbed wire strung across there, and every night from the silhouette, you'd see a silhouette of the ropes of the rats crawling across this barbed wire. And the one night, our barrel was in the corner, and the one night, one of the barrels lost his footing, and we heard him splash in the water. And it's dark as hell. And they said, what are we going to do? I said, we can't get it out of there now. Hell, I don't know where it is. I don't know whether he's swimming around or whether he bites you or what. So we'll have to wait. And we got him out the next morning. He was dead. He drowned, but we still drank the water. I mean, it was the only water. And I don't tell if I could ever do it again, but we did. And it's just, yeah. War will make you do a lot of dumb stuff that you wouldn't know that or think you could do.
So, after they determined you're okay, what do they do with you after you're?
Well, we went back to this Camp Lucky Strike. You know, we finally, after we got to go back to our company's area once, and for a half a day, and talk to the guys that are left, and some of them were actually on leave already, and then we went to we're back, like I said, we went up to Le Havre, you know, or outside of Le Havre, and one day, and like you know, you say you talk to a lot of Air Force. One day, here comes this. We're in a fighter strip. That's where this camp was. This Camp Lucky Strike was on a fighter strip, but it belonged to the Frenchmen, and then the Germans took it over, and then I don't know whether we took it over or not, but anyway, we had the camp there, and here comes this B-17. He's coming in for a landing, and they're trying to wave him off, and he comes in. Every day there was planes coming in to see if some of their old buddies and friends were released, or they could find them. I guess they may have heard that they were. That's where, but this big one, and there was no room, and he actually went off the runway at the end of his landing, and it was probably on a weekend, and because he was there for about 3 days. I guess it was Sunday he came in, and then we were all wondering how in the hell they were going to get him out of there, because he just didn't have the room to. And so about Wednesday it was, I think, we heard the engines on the airplane start up, and they revved them, and I bet for 2 hours you could hear the engines going on the plane, and it was good and hot, and they took everything they could out of that airplane, as we went down and watched them a little bit, and then all of a sudden it was him and the pilot. I mean, the pilot and a co-pilot, and they took off, and before they let him go, they had the engines roaring, and he took off, and right where he comes off the landing strip was a road, and the road had some wires on it, and that was his main thing, to get over the top of those wires. If he'd have hit those wires, it sure as hell went down. And well, I bet you could have put. It must have been that much. It looked like his wheels. And everybody, 40,000 guys, and they're all clapping like hell. It's just to make it to get off that. But yeah, it's the thing of it is, can you imagine? I mean, I've seen a few of them. Once when we was before I was captured, we seen this group going over planes, and they went over, and the anti-aircraft in St. Nazaire was firing like mad at them, and they must have went down and bombed somewhere down in the lower part of, and you could hear the bombs going off, and then the planes came back, and they flew back over, and they were fired at again, and all of a sudden here comes this lone plane by itself, real slow, and that poor guy, and I mean they fired and fired and fired, and that made us so happy when that guy got out of range. But I mean he was somewhere along the line he had was shot up, not a little bit, something happened, I don't know, but and it's.
So when did they ship you out of the Camp Lucky Strike back to the United States?
Well, we got it was in June.
June.
And well, like I said, I got home. We landed in I can't think of the up in not in New York coming back. The ship landed in.
Did you get to see the Statue of Liberty on the way back?
No, we didn't. We didn't go to New York. We come down the coast a little bit further.
Philadelphia, Baltimore.
I think maybe around Baltimore or something. There's a mountain. Shit. I had two words. I think. Mountain View.
Mountain View, New Jersey.
Someplace.
That's outside of Philadelphia.
Someplace.
Where did you go when you got home? You're still in the Army when you come back.
Yeah. We went to our separation centers, and no, we had to go down to let me think now. Trying to think where we. Anyway, we got a 90-day furlough, and then we had to report down to Miami Beach, and we were there a week, and they sent us up to Camp McCall, a group of us, and they said, "We don't want you. This is airborne troops. We don't want you." So then they sent it. Then we went to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, and went to the 28th Division. The 28th Division was disbanded. They were leaving, and a private was the first sergeant, and he'd say, "What do you think?" And because I was the only sergeant, and he said, "What do you think? Can you go out today?" Oh no, I said, "These guys are too weak." I said, "You better let us sleep for a while." And and then they were, like I said, they were disbanded, so we had to get out of there, and they sent us over to another spot of the camp, and it was almost empty, except that we were taking walks, and we found a dental clinic, and we went into the dental. They didn't have nothing to do, so we went into the dental clinic, and they fixed all our teeth to where it was all perfect when we come out, and then we got, and then they put us in this other place, and it was going to be the Army of Occupation in Japan, and by that time, boy, I was, because it had said all prisoners were to be discharged immediately. You know, that's what the papers had it, and that was even before I went back to, and so we went to the chaplain, and the chaplain, in about 3 days, we got sent to all of us to our own separation centers, and we got discharged.
Where was your separation center?
Atterbury.
Camp Atterbury.
Yeah.
And what was the date of your discharge?
I think it was in December 12th, maybe.
December of '45.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you came straight on back to Norwood?
Yep. Yeah. And
now, when you were a prisoner of war, did your mom and dad know you were a prisoner?
not for 3 months. I think Susie got the telegrams somewhere. the first one said I was missing in action, and then the second one said that I was a prisoner of war.
Mm-hmm.
We was I was about the first time that the Swiss Red Cross visited us, and I guess that's where they got the names and that to turn them into that we were prisoners, because otherwise nobody else did it.
Did you get any Red Cross food parcels while you were at the POW camp?
Let me tell you, the Swiss Red Cross came this one day, and this guy had kind of a he had top on his car, and his car was loaded with grips about so wide. They were like made out of like masonite, you know, and I didn't pull that off, did I? And everybody, cigarettes, you know, food, it's, you know, and we all got one of them grips, and I always say I was last, and I was helping the guy unload them, and I heard cussing, and what the hell are they cussing for? They got a nice grip. Well, the grip had, they opened them up, and it had a pair of pajamas in it. What do you know? You need a pair of pajamas in a prison camp, and a sweater that women must have learned how to. It was that time it was so hot, and the women must have learned how to crochet in a class or something, because some of their midriffs were about to hair, and the other one arm would be this long. They were funny, and halazone tablets. You know that's a tablet that you put in water to purify it. X-Lax. Nothing that and the only thing to eat, honest to gosh, was a little penny candy Nestle's bar, about that big square. Somebody, you know, I can't see the Americans sending over a package like that. Yeah. Somebody went through the whole damn thing, stole everything out of there that was available. Just like I never did ever get the supply sergeant was a good friend of mine, and he swore up and down that he sent all my stuff home, and they never got anything. And I think where they went through, you know, if anything that was going back towards United States, guys were taken.
Yeah.
He's probably dead anyway. Nobody will know the difference,
right.
You know. And because I had a list of all my guys. I had friends that I had knew all the time from when I was in there, and I could come in touch with, but I don't know where they went. It was.
So, when you get home, what do you do with yourself?
Me? Well, you know, it was funny. I was. I don't know. I got home on a Sunday, and I got home right before my parents were going to mass, and we went to mass together, 7 o'clock mass, and that afternoon I was down at the bar, and I run into this guy, and he said, "Hey, you want a job?" And he says, "I'm glad you guys are coming home, starting to come home." Well, this guy, Norwood, was opening up a safety lane for automobiles.
That's right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And So he said, he said, you're not going anyplace else? No. So right after the first of the year, I start working there, and then I went to college for a couple of years, and I didn't enjoy myself there, and I run into another guy that I knew, and he right over here off the railroad tracks there was a lumber yard, and he said, "Would you like a job?" I said, "Yeah." "What do you do?" I said, "Come on over and see me." Well, we went over and talked to him, and I got a job working at the lumber yard in the office. And then I started out in sales, and then the the owners sold, and the guy took the they had a son-in-law that took over, and he was a nice guy, but he was an ex-Marine, and he drank too much, and I think they wanted to sell the business so they could keep an eye on him more than because the business was making money, and so they did. They got rid of that, and then the same guy that hired me the first time had moved to another lumber yard over in Elmwood, and he heard that they were closing. He asked me if I wanted a job. By that time, I was out in sales, so I said, "Yeah." I said, so I left one job on a Friday and started a new one on Monday, and so I really never missed any. And by that time, we got to have 3 or 4 children, you know.
What lumber yards were those?
And Cordes, Cordes, and was there for a few years, and the owners died, and the children didn't want no part of it, but they all wanted the money. So me and this other guy bought the place, and then he dies, and at the end of the year, and I buy it from him, and then my 2 boys start working for me, and they got out of high school and that, and they start working. One of them went to University of Dayton, and then he started working for me. He's running a place now, and so I didn't really after the war I didn't have a whole week, you know, where I didn't do anything. I just one thing bounced right back, and
is it still called Cordes?
yeah, he
Where's it located at now?
over in Elmwood.
Elmwood.
It's probably one of the
Last lumber yards around here, isn't it?
it's probably one of the few left that in town that was privately owned. You know, the other ones are all, you know, Home Depot and
Right.
and Menards and all them places. It's but they do. But our best part of it was that we done mill work, and we made doors, we made windows, we made. I mean, there were some pretty good people that knew what to do. And they just finished 2 doors that they made for a lady that they're rounded, but they were rounded like this. They go into the wall, not square across, rounded, and they were like $5,000 a piece. So she had plenty of money. She still got it too. She still got plenty of money.
Let's talk about GH, if we can.
Well,
First of all,
Jenny.
How did you meet your future wife?
Yeah, it was funny as hell. We always kidded about it. I mean, I did anyway. You know, we used in the summertime. The eagles would have a picnic. The moose would have a picnic. The Democrats would have a picnic, and Republicans would have a picnic. We were everything, you know. We would go to the picnics on Sunday, and me and my he ended up marrying my sister, who was a brother-in-law. I wasn't a brother-in-law at the time, and we were at this picnic. In fact, this past week or last week, my great granddaughter was at this park right close to where I met my wife, but they'd changed it around, you know, sold this ground, and she was standing there.
What park was it?
It was in Madeira.
Madeira.
And so, you know, we were playing ball, and I was playing third base, and we have always had a beer with us too. And I ran out, and she was standing there. I said, "Hey, kid," I said, "run over to the bar and get me a beer, will you?" I said, she ran as fast as her legs would carry her to get a beer, you know, and that's how. And then later on, through a friend of mine that I went to school with, he knew her mother and father, and I actually met her father before I met her, and she was 6 years younger than I was, and
what was her full name?
Virginia Holmes.
And was she raised in Norwood also?
Well, her parents were from Kentucky, and then they moved out to Bethel, Ohio, and then they moved into Norwood. He worked for USU, and so it was when he lived in Bethel, they had a place out there, but then they got this place in Norwood, and so so I guess that's
what were her mom and dad's names?
Her father's name was Logan Holmes. Her mother's name was Noki.
Noki.
She was more or less the one from Kentucky. Her sister was. They were all named kind of funny. Noki. She had 2 or 3 sisters, and I can't even remember half of them. But they're all good people.
Mm-hmm.
And they treated me like a king.
How long did you all go together?
Oh, about 3 years. I mean, I was about 25, and she was about 19, and we never got married till she was 21. And we said we'll wait till you're 21.
And where did you get married at?
Up here in St. Elizabeth's Church.
St. Elizabeth?
Yeah.
And what was the date of your marriage?
The 10th of November in 1950.
1950?
1950.
November the 10th of 1950?
Yeah.
And how many children did you all have?
7.
7 children?
Yeah, 5 boys and 2 girls.
I see.
Yeah.
Are all of your children still living?
Yeah.
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 And what are their names?
Well, Tommy's the first one. Donna's the first one. Tommy's the second one. Joe's the third. Jim's the fourth. Steve's the fifth. Dave. And Susie, the daughter.
So what is it? 5 boys and
5 boys and 2 girls.
2 girls.
Yeah, the girl on the front and the girl. I always say she's the engine and the caboose.
Did your wife ever work outside the house?
No,
other than having children?
She was working at the American Laundry and I was, I guess, I said when she was pregnant with the first baby, I said, "You don't have to work no more." I don't know. Was that a bell?
No, it was a
She's coming down.
clang noise from upstairs.
Susie,
What?
think somebody's there.
What?
Is that a package?
Oh, I'll come down a minute.
So, and grandchildren?
12 12 grandchildren, and 18 great grandchildren.
Right.
So she did a good job.
Yeah. So you raised a great family too.
My favorite thing is, we all get together, and there's actually there's some through marriage there's some grandchildren too, and there's about 54 of us when we were together, and all together for. I said, well, none of us would be here if it wasn't for the fact that guy couldn't shoot straight.
That's right.
It's truth.
Yeah.
That's one thing I think we all went through our mind is why am I here and why isn't my friend gone? It's,
Do you go to? Have you gone to many of the reunions for your?
oh, they started them. That was one of our last words that they tell me that our general said, is that he would like for them to start a reunion thing to keep them together, and I came home one day. My wife and I were out on a little ride. We came back. It was on a Sunday, and there's a note in the mailbox that said, if you want to find out anything about I didn't know about it because I had left the company, before they even mentioned anything about the PVO. And they said, if you want to know anything about it, get a hold of this guy. And it was a guy up and a few of them up in New Jersey got together and started and it was at first it was like a weekend, they started, and then when I heard about it, and I talked to, the first one was in Arlington, Virginia, or West Virginia, or Virginia, right. In fact, we looked right down on the Pentagon building.
Yeah.
And there was about 700 guys there then.
Wow.
But then it reached a point, and then it started. The last of us that went to Camp Landy, that was our last reunion last year. Well, about all of them were in wheelchairs. None of them could walk around down there all over the place, and including me. And
do you drive?
yeah, I still drive.
Yeah.
But my legs are pretty well. I had to give up. I played golf until this year, and I just can't make it anymore. I walk down to the corner. I'm tired. But I said, well, you ought to be, dumbass. You walked about 50 miles.
Well, it's probably why you're in such good health, though.
Yeah.
Playing golf all those years and walking and
Yes.
exercise.
Well, all through my. She's a great dog lover, my daughter, and we were at a picnic, and she was just a young girl, and there was a guy there that said, "Hey, Susie," he said, you want a puppy?" His one dog had puppies. She said, "I don't know. I have to ask my mom and dad." So she comes to me and she says, "Dad, Mom said it was okay if I had a puppy, and can I have one?" And she says, "It's up to you." I said, well, if your mom said it, yeah, okay. And I said, and then she said, then she goes to her mother and she says, Mom, Dad said it was okay to have a puppy if it's okay with you. So she played two of them against both of us against one another, and so then, but then him and I used to walk every night. We'd walk about until he died. We walk from a little one to I guess 10 years. We walk every night about 2 miles,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I mean, and the one time, I don't know if you recall the day that the Bengals played in the Zero Bowl.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Huh? You remember that?
Somebody was down there without their shirt on that day too.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, goofy guy.
Yeah.
You know, and well, that week it was 26 below here, and that's the coldest it's ever been.
77.
And yeah, that was Seattle. And well, I still bundled up, and we wanted to come home from work. We went and took a walk, you know, and all of a sudden I missed the dog, and I start whistling for him, and he don't come, and I didn't want him to be out in the cold, you know, not if I went back in. So I still trying to find him, and pretty soon my wife and my one son comes out looking for me. They said, "Oh, the hell, the dog came home a lot early." I said, "Here I am looking all over for that damn dog, and he had more brains than I did. He went home." But it was. Yeah, we had tickets. We had tickets to the game that day, and fortunately, I didn't really want to go in that cold.
No,
And
God, no.
my wife, she started coughing, and I said, "We're not going to go to that game, not with you coughing." And I acted like I was brave. And my other son my nephew took the tickets, but it was, and you know, there was.
It's terrible. Yeah.
You know, the one kid that was older, and he's probably in his 30s or something like that, 30s or 40s. He had a pint of whiskey, and he was with the boys, and he damn near died. You know, I didn't know that you know, they say whiskey warm you up. You know, it doesn't. It constricts your
Arteries.
your arteries, that you get less blood fluid flowing, and they put him by the heat, and they rubbed him. They rubbed him in the room.
That's your boy.
Get him moving again.
Mm.
But yeah, I remember these guys were crazy as hell.
Yeah. Yeah. At this point, usually in our interviews, Sergeant, we have Brian has some questions, and I'm sure he has plenty today.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that your father lived down on 2nd Street. I guess that was like the
No,
farm.
he didn't live there. He worked there.
Well, I thought he had lived there initially. Didn't he live?
No.
Do you guys live downtown? And you
Oh,
moved to
but
Norfolk?
he lived.
You said you were born downtown, weren't you?
I was, yeah. I was born around McMicken Street. McMicken, you know where McMicken?
Mm-hmm.
And my dad and his family were I don't know the name of it. I can't remember the name of the street. There was right around where the Central Parkway was.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, my question is why did your dad choose Norwood to move to?
I don't know. You have to ask him. No, well, I think it was. There's always a you know, no matter where you're at. I mean, people move out. I mean, start a city, and they move out, and it was a lot of places, I guess, were taken up. Like, well, it's and Norwood was probably a nice place. They probably told him it was a nice place, and just starting, you know. And
Did he continue to work downtown then?
oh yeah, yeah. They had for a long time. They had a bus that went right past the house, and on down, and then he just got on the bus and go down to the probably Fifth Street, I guess, and then walk from Fifth Street down to Second Street.
Did he own his shop, or did he
No,
work?
no, he worked for a. They had every time there was a big flood, why he had to go down there and take the the motors off all the presses and take them upstairs. And the '37 flood was probably the worst they were ever in. He was down there. He went down on a Saturday. I remember that, and he was. He told my mother that he said that he would be home by noontime, and so he had to where his shop was. He had to get on the Coast Guard would take him to the back window of the building where he could get in, the second floor, and he had to move some of the stuff that they already moved to the second floor up to the third floor, and the building was a 3-story building, and he says it won't take time. It won't take that long. I should be home by noontime. Well, noontime didn't show up. He didn't show up. Noontime later on didn't show up. Didn't show up. And then going into the night, at midnight he finally got home, and she was worried to death. And here on Broadway, between 2nd and 3rd Street, there was a building that from the flood collapsed, and the Coast Guard was there, and they had forgotten about him being in the building, and they didn't get him and his buddy until they must have come by. Somebody come by and they hollered at the 3rd floor window, hollered at him and said, "Hey, can you get somebody here to get us?" But my mom was worried to death. I can imagine.
Well, I guess you were still in high school when Pearl Harbor got attacked.
Yep.
Do you remember what you were doing when you heard about that?
Yes, sirree. I was bowling. The church league, St. Elizabeth, they had on Sunday they had a church league, and I was only, well, let's see, I was 18, wasn't it? 42, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was December the 7th, 41.
41.
Yeah.
I was 17.
17.
And I had bowled fairly much. I was a lot better bowler than a lot of the men that bowled in that league, and I bowled with my dad's team. And we left and it was overcast, and we walked out, and the newspaper kids were going up and down the street hollering, "Extra, extra, Pearl Harbor bombed. Extra." Another one was going up, "Extra, extra, Manila bombed." Where the hell are they at? Where, and that was that. Everybody said that, I think, around here anyway.
Yeah.
But everybody knows where it is now, though, for same sure.
So it was a while after Pearl Harbor when you went into the service. So what was going on in Norwood during wartime? What memories do you have of that, like rationing or anything like that here in Norwood?
Well, they went through all the things like collecting steel metal anything that would fit with the what they needed. You know, people was out collecting, and we didn't. Of course, going to school, you don't think about what's going to happen about you when you're going into. But and then in the senior year, a lot of guys. I wouldn't say a lot of guys, but maybe one or two guys out of each class, enlisted. They were maybe a year older. I mean, they were taking them. I mean, if your parents signed, you could get in when you were 17. But it's everybody got together. I tell you that. I mean, it's amazing. How the home front clicked with the Army. I mean, the Army did the job, and the servicemen did the job, and the people did their job at home. And then they start building up with all the plants, like where GE is out here. That was a Army plant, and that's where most of the people, if a lot of the guys that work for like Alice Chalmers, I don't know you remember that when I was here.
Yep.
And I mean a lot of our fathers died young, and my dad didn't, but I mean a lot of them died young because they worked 13 hours a day. I mean, every 7 days a week. I mean, and on an older body,
Yeah.
it works on them. It does, and it's.
Yeah, were there other? Do you know in Norwood were there other factories here that was doing war effort stuff?
Well, any place like even the lumber company that I bought, I ended up buying. They made ammunition boxes. Somebody usually in their business could transfer to
Convert.
Yeah, convert to something. Yeah,
While you were still here before you went into service, were there any like Gold Star mothers? Were there people in the community already affected by that yet? Anybody who lost somebody that you remember?
Yeah, probably more or less in the beginning was Air Force people. They we had probably just up at the church up there. We probably had about maybe 20 guys, 20 of them through the whole war that was killed. And that's actually, I think I'd seen I'm trying to think of what the percentage was that they figured of out of the 7 million guys that were in the service, there was 100 and
You mean how many were killed?
how many killed? The percentage was
460 some million. I mean, 1,000 Americans were killed during the war.
yeah, it was.
So, were you already over in Europe when D-Day started, or had you not gone?
No.
Where were you when D-Day started?
D-Day, I was in Alabama, or Arkansas.
Okay, you were still there. So, when did you hear about D-Day? Did you have any sense that was going to be happening already, or did you just find out like everybody else?
Well, the news all hit quick, but I mean, everybody had an inkling of something. There was going to be something sometime or other, you know, but not when, nobody knew, but was the only thing you would have is say, please God, take care of them, you know, because it was 1 out of 3, about what it took.
Well, when you were a prisoner, you said there. How many Americans were in there with you?
About 22.
Were they all part of your
Yeah.
same unit, or were there anybody else from somewhere else?
Well, they had a. Didn't you hear me say that they had a prisoner exchange right before and that took all the ones that were there.
Okay.
But and we were. I guess we were. There was probably. I don't know. In fact, I'm not sure how many were there when we were there. I think we might have been the first 6. The first 5, it was 4 because the other 2 were in a hospital. But I think there might have been a couple other ones. There was a.
Did they exchange the French people also?
The French were there. There was some Frenchmen there. Did they exchange them? I don't know. I mean, you mean?
Like they did the Americans?
I doubt it.
Yeah, because there were still Frenchmen there when you came in.
They wouldn't let the Frenchmen, and they wouldn't let them out. I mean, you know, they were.
Yeah.
They were, you know, they never liked one another.
Right.
Like this one boy that was in there. He could speak a little bit of English. He was came from Alsace-Lorraine, and when he's growing up, he's speaking French. When he gets after the World War I, he had to speak German or
Right.
something.
Right.
And then he had to speak German first, and then French, and then 4 times it changed, where he had to. He says, now I go back, I don't know what the hell I'm going to speak. But it's actually French territory, isn't it?
Yeah, it is now again. Yeah, after the war, but.
You were mentioned they kept you in like in a baggage area at that hangar. Is that where you spent most of your time, or did you have a routine? Were you allowed to?
I wasn't allowed to do.
exercise?
I wasn't allowed to do nothing. I could do my own exercising. I could go outside anytime I wanted. I mean, you know, but it was all fenced in, barbed wire fence, you know. But it wasn't regimented or along the line anywhere. That you better do this or you're gonna get the shit knocked out of you or something, you know.
And with that diet you were given at that time, I guess you must have lost some weight when you were in there.
I weighed 100. It's funny. I weighed 177 pounds when, because my buddy and I was in London about 3 weeks before we actually went, and we weighed, I don't know, it was some kind of stone that we weighed. You know how they do it? I mean,
Yeah, right, the weight system over there.
yeah, but it amounted to 177 pounds. So I forget how many stone, but when I come out, I weighed 133 pounds. So I lost about 44 pounds in a little over 4 months.
And you had mentioned that the German officers said they didn't have much food either themselves. Were they just cut off from somewhere, or
There was
no more supplies?
There was no more supplies.
Yeah.
I mean, the only supplies they had was what the French grew, and I think the only thing they knew how to grow was rutabagas. Did you ever eat rutabagas every day? Yeah. That's another funny story. A friend of mine that owned a delicatessen store over up across the street from the school. He was anytime that we came home on leave or anything like that, because everybody knew him, would stop there because if there was any chance of getting cigarettes, buy a cigarettes, pack of cigarettes, he would give them to the serviceman. He wouldn't give them to anybody else except the serviceman. And so I stopped in to get a pack of cigarettes from him, and he said, "You're just in time to eat." I said, "What the hell are you eating there?" It's kind of, it looks like a pumpkin, colored. He says, "Good old rutabagas." I said, "No, thanks. I tried it once. I don't like it." But
Oh.
it was.
When you were in the prison, did you get a sense that the war could be over soon? Were people any rumors?
The one day, this camp commander called us in, and he said, he said, well, this is going anyway. He said, Chamberlain died. He said, Roosevelt died. Hitler's now dead, and Stalin, he's the only one left. When he's dead, the war will be over. But that was what he said. And incidentally, I don't know if you know much about Stalin. He was probably the worst butcher that ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
he didn't die in 1953.
No.
Yeah.
So is that how you found out when Roosevelt and Hitler had died? That's when you found out. You got the news about when they died.
Well, because Hitler died first. I mean, Roosevelt died first.
Yeah, I know, but I was wondering if you were informed at the same time.
No. He informed. It was on the radio.
Okay, you had access to.
He had a radio that he would turn up in his, and I guess it was German radio, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was American radio. I don't know, but I heard him talking about it. He had it by his window, where his headquarters was, and he said Roosevelt died. And,
was he the one who told you that the war is over? I mean, how did you find out that you were finally going to be out of there and stuff?
I think that this German guard. I think he was a sergeant of the guard. I think he was the one that told me. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but he spoke a good bit of same German that my mother and grandmother spoke, and he would talk to me. He was in his private life. He was a choreographer. He was a little heavy-set guy, but he was a choreographer for nightclubs in Berlin, and he was a typical. So like some of the Americans were too. He hated the war. He hated to be hell. He's a dancer. And the guy was, he would flip around for you, where he taught, he was, but I think he would call me Rote, for red. Oh, Rote. But in fact, I tried to. I thought he was a pretty good egg. I mean, really, and I told him to surrender to me. So that I said, don't surrender to the French, surrender to me. And I said, when we get off the bus, you give me your pistol. I said, I'll take you as a prisoner. And I don't know whether they allowed me to do that or not, but he wouldn't do it. I can't leave my man. I can't leave my man. I don't know whatever ever happened to him, but he treated us all right. I mean,
Do you know how many guards or how many Germans were at that prison camp? How many soldiers were stationed there? Did you get a sense of that?
No, I didn't. Well, I mean, just the ones you see around it. You know, there were the same guys all the time, but there was probably maybe a dozen guys. You know, they switch, be on 3 or 4 hours, and be off. You know, probably maybe more than that. But some of them wouldn't even talk to you. You know, some of them. You know, but
Did they issue any kind of clothing?
no, just a blanket and the mattress.
So you just wore the same outfit you were captured
Oh
in?
yeah, yeah.
Were you ever allowed to do any laundry?
No, I that's what he's. Well, I think I mentioned in my book or something like that. What the hell? I said we all stunk so bad probably, but nobody ever noticed it because we all smelled the same. But
Could you see the Loire River from where
Yeah.
you were?
yeah,
Okay.
I tell you, this one day we were out there, and the guard that was at that back gate, Lou, you heard me mention his name, that big guy,
Yeah.
like spoke with an English.
Lou, you said his name.
Lou,
Yeah.
yeah, and he had a gun. He was 6'3" at least, and he had a gun that went almost from his heels up to his shoulders. So it's a long rifle, and I'd never seen anything like that. And I don't know. We used to tease him. He said, "You're gonna hit a bull in the ass with that damn thing." He said, "How the hell you hold that damn gun way the hell up in it, with a long barrel like that?" And there was a duck that landed out in the Loire River, and I guess it was 50 yards away. And hell, they would, you know, shoot that duck something to eat. Bam, you don't hit that damn duck. I said, well, shit, I ain't moving out of here. I ain't. But there was another guy there. He wasn't friendly, but he wasn't mean either. I mean, he didn't bother you. But he used to, when the tide come in and out, he would trap something, but they were about that long, and it looked like a snake. And he would hang him up on a line and let him dry out, and then he'd carry him in his pocket like a cigar. And he'd eat him. I guess it was. I don't know what the hell it was, but nobody wanted part of that either. I don't know what the hell it was, but he ate them. It was.
Did you see any of the people from the town? Did any of those ever come into the area?
No. But the only time, maybe an old Frenchman or something, they come in with a cart, and it was that's a box. There was a box that was about 5 feet by 5 feet, about 5 feet tall. It was slats, and they would dump their rudibakers in that thing, and you could look in and see where a rat might have started at the bottom of the thing and went up right through it, and then he eat a hole right through every damn one of those it's
Well, how did you guys keep yourselves entertained? Did you have any cards or something, or?
There was one guy. He, I think one of the guards got him a good guitar. Just brought it in. He was one of the prisoners. He wasn't in my company. He was in another company. I never knew him before that, and he was a fellow from Kentucky, and him and I used to sing, sit in the corner and sing. He'd teach me how to sing songs, you know, old
Hillbilly song?
Oh, Western, yeah, hillbilly, yeah. But well, you either talked or you to somebody or talk to yourself, or I mean, you know, there wasn't nothing to do. I mean, you couldn't do nothing.
And you weren't getting any mail from anybody. They
No,
didn't know
no
where you
mail,
were, yeah,
no.
nothing,
No.
did you keep in touch with any of those guys that you were in the prison camp with over the years?
Like I said, I don't know if I had a list of names that never did ever get back to me.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
The ones that doesn't hurt, but I would have sure liked it and find out whatever happened to the 6 guys that if they ever lived through the war. Or,
Do you remember any of their names?
I'd have to go through my mind a lot, you know.
Well, I got one last question. So this past summer, I guess the country of France came here to Norwood to.
Did you ever see it? It's up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I was at the ceremony. So can you tell a little bit how they found out about you, how that came about?
Well, our PVO, you know, our club, you know, our gal there, she got all kinds of, she always got information from the service and different things, and I don't really know how she ever found out, but and reading stuff that came into the I guess the veterans magazines or but she probably got some information that we didn't get, and she was the one that was telling us about it, and the reason mine took so long to get is that when they redid my papers, and I can remember they asked us a question, you know, and did you know, they asked us where we fought at, and they mentioned the Rhineland, and I thought the Rhineland meant Europe, you know, and I said yeah, and they did that, I think, down in Miami, and so the new papers that I had, they had me fighting in Germany, and you had to be in this certain area. There were 3 areas in France that you had to be in. That was D-Day and I think Falaise or whatever the hell they call it.
Falaise Gap.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I think that and then the southern, and I happened to be in the southern, and they said that I wasn't eligible to get it, and I said, how can the rest of the guys be getting it, and not me? And I didn't give a shit about it, but my daughter and they worked hard on it, and they talked to this person and that person, and talked to the French consulate and everything else, and they told them, and they sent my memoirs to them, and you know, why would I write the damn things if I wasn't in, you know? And finally, after 2 years, my daughter-in-law and Susie, they got us, and the gal that run our organization, they got the and it was really nice, I tell you.
Wonderful ceremony.
Yeah, they and I said, shit, as far as I know, I said, we paid for these. The United States probably paid for them. They got everything else free. But it's like the guy said afterwards, you know, the guy that gave us the medal, he said, you know, you're a member of a very
Select group, small
yeah.
group.
Yeah, he said, Eisenhower's got the medal, Patton's got the medal, he's going through, and I said, shit, everybody you didn't mention except me is dead. But that's one thing I believe. I mean, I think I can speak for a lot of them. The medals didn't make any difference. I mean, you know, and you know, they all like to look at it. I never did wear anything up there, you know. The only thing I was proud of, and I am to this day, is the combat infantry badge,
Right.
the one up on top.
Exactly right.
Well, that's my last question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, at this point, Sergeant Roettgers, I want to thank you for this interview, and I especially want to thank you for your service to our country and your patriotism and allowing us to
Hey,
celebrate your life.
I really appreciate it. I mean, it's you know, it, like I used to say, if it had to come, you could do it again, and do it again. You know, I
Thank
mean,
you.
I've met more people that were great guys.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you again.